We haven't spoken since before the publication of the Sue Gray report, but prior to that, you were quite adamant that you felt that Boris Johnson hadn't done enough wrong to warrant, losing his leadership. Now that that report has been published, do you stand by that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's some very serious breach of regulations contained within the Sue Gray report, and it's a shameful day for Number 10 and for British politics that happened in any Prime Minister's watch and any civil servant's watch. So really not good at all, and it should never have happened. But nevertheless, we are where we find ourselves. And if you read the report, what the Prime Minister himself was personally found guilty of was pretty much confined to attending one or two events for a very short period of time, 9 or 10 minutes. So, yes, he breached guidelines. I think that's clear, and he's apologised for that. The question then remains, are those breaches serious enough to require a Prime Minister to resign, a leader of a nation at a very difficult time? And my view still is that they do not reach that point, and therefore I think we should carry on with the Prime Minister and show loyalty to him and see if we can get the show back on the road.
Prior to the vote last night, I was looking at your Twitter feed, which is the way things are these days, and you were notably silent about which way you were going to vote prior to that happening. Now, I know it's a secret ballot. Nonetheless, several MPs did make their intentions public.
Yeah, I mean, I declared my position about 7:30 last night, I think. I mean, I am loyal. I'm naturally loyal as a person, I think, but I don't show blind loyalty. And of course, I had concerns, not just about the incidents themselves, but also whether we'd been completely frank and honest and transparent. And so, yes, concerns, of course. But again, you've got to judge that against the threshold you need to get to require a Prime Minister to step down. Particularly one, I've got to say, that was elected by such a huge majority by the British people. That's how democracy works. And to ask all those people to vote and decide which Prime Minister they want and which government they want, and then to countermand that by a relatively small vote in Parliament is something you've got to do very cautiously, in my view. So yes, I mean, that's where I think we got to. And I think the Prime Minister deserves that chance to try and put this behind him and to try and get the government machine working again and start to deal with some of the priorities that we need to deal with over the coming months, as we have done over the past months in terms of things like Ukraine, COVID, and the cost of living crisis. I think there's been some good interventions, and principally they've come from the Prime Minister and the Chancellor.
You talk just now about the majority with which he was returned a few years ago or a couple of years ago, but you'll be as well aware as I am that current public opinion suggests that nearly 60% of the British public would like to see him go. So that's not really reflective of the current position.
Well, I mean, it's a trite kind of phrase, but there's only one poll that really matters, and that's the elections. So listen, I don't think we should ignore public feeling on this, and it's not just the polls I read in the papers as you do, but also the people I speak to in my constituency, and first and foremost those are people I think. Now, that's not a one view. Let's look at this. I mean, I think lots of people come up to me and say you must vote against the Prime Minister, and lots of other people say to me you shouldn't. So I think naturally people who want to get rid of the Prime Minister are likely to write to us more than people who want him to stay, just where people tend to react to things. So, but we're not in a good place, John. I don't think the vote last night was some kind of unbridled success for the Prime Minister. It was much tighter than many expected. And I think there's a big job to do to restore confidence amongst parliamentarians and amongst the general public. One thing I would say, Boris Johnson.
You say that, so allow me to interrupt. I mean, let's talk about that result last night just briefly. I mean, between a third, or almost exactly between a third and a half of Conservative MPs voted against him. Now, that really does split the party. I mean, obviously he would have won with one extra vote, but it didn't quite come to that. But that really does split the party. Do you not think that affects the effectiveness of this parliament going forward?
Yeah, I mean, 41%, I think it was, who voted against him. And that's pretty serious. 41% of your colleagues say that you're not the right person to lead your organisation, and in this case, the country. That's pretty serious. So we shouldn't take that lightly and simply move on and expect that not to learn the lessons from that. The Prime Minister has committed to learning the lessons of it. But and one thing I would say about the Prime Minister, he has incredible bounce back ability. He has been written off so many times before and bounced straight back. And it is only a year ago, don't forget, that we won a massive victory in Hartlepool. It's May 21. I mean, it's incredible. It seems a lot longer away than that. And but so, you can bounce back. Things, fortunes do suffer in politics. But if you look at opinion polls you quoted just then, what tends to happen with all leaders, and this happened with Blair, Brown, Thatcher, May, lots of Major, your popularity declines between elections, and it then starts to rise as you go into the next election. That's what tends to happen. With all of them, it happens like that. What we've got to see from the Prime Minister is the ability to turn that rating around and turn the popularity of this government around by starting to put the measures in place and look like develop that reputation for calm competence in terms of how we run this country, and rather than some of the chaotic stuff that's happened over recent months.
Absolutely. And, how confident are you? You've talked about his bounce back ability, but how confident are you that he can turn those rebel MPs around? Because also, if we look at recent history, and perhaps not so recent history, we've had leaders who've survived a vote of confidence before and then have had a very limited rule, have stayed for a limited amount of time after that. And that's happened several times.
Yeah, that's true. One thing I would add to that, though, very rarely have the prime ministers you're talking about had such a massive majority. So I think it all depends. I think the majority of MPs made up all kind of different cohorts last night who voted against the prime minister. But one probably common thread is they're worried about the next general election. They're worried about the overall result, and they're worried about their own seats. So I think if we can turn the tables on the popularity stakes, which are not good at the moment, then I think they will be more satisfied with the Prime Minister. So that's going to be the key to it. Can we re-engender that confidence and trust between our government and the British public? And that's what the Prime Minister's got to show he can do. Otherwise, he will face some more difficult nights and another vote of no confidence against him at some point.
So I'm guessing that you think he can.
If I didn't think he could, I would have voted against him. I would. I think on the balance, and you're right to say before, it was a finely balanced decision, mine. But nevertheless, I think on balance, I think he deserves the opportunity to try and restore confidence and try and get the government machine working effectively again. There's lots of things we've done right, as well as there's something that lots of the opposition and media want to point at that we've got wrong. But let's try and focus on what's really important now: Ukraine, cost of living, inflation, all those things that we need to get right, and levelling up, and the huge agenda that sits behind that, and improve, get the economy growing again and productivity, so we improve prosperity. Those are the things that will make a difference to people when we come into the next election, and it will be our legacy and Boris Johnson's legacy. He'll want that legacy to reflect making a success of levelling up and improving the outcomes and opportunities of every single person in this country, but most of all, the people who have been left behind previously, which includes large parts of the north, of course.